My grandpa walked into my room and asked, "Did you just use the toilet?" "Yeah." I paused my game confused because that seemed like a really random thing to ask. "Okay," he said. Then his eyes rolled back and he collapsed right there on my bedroom floor. His whole body started shaking like he was having a seizure. I dropped my controller and rushed over to him yelling his name, but he wasn't responding. His face was turning this scary gray color, and there was foam coming out of his mouth. I'd never seen anything like it, and my hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone to call 911. The operator kept asking me questions while I tried to keep my grandpa on his side like she instructed. Was he breathing? Yes, but it sounded weird and raspy. Was he on any medications? I had no idea because Grandpa was always super private about his health stuff. How old was he? 67 and usually pretty healthy for his age. The ambulance got there in what felt like forever, but was probably only 10 minutes. The paramedics rushed in with all this equipment and started checking his vitals and putting an IV in his arm. They kept asking what happened, but all I could tell them was that he asked about the toilet and then collapsed. They looked at each other confused, but loaded him onto the stretcher anyway. I rode in the ambulance holding his hand while they worked on him. His skin felt cold and clammy, and I kept thinking about how we'd just been joking around at dinner about him beating me at chess again. The paramedics were talking in medical terms I didn't understand, but I could tell from their faces that something was seriously wrong. At the hospital, they rushed him into the emergency room and made me wait outside. I called my mom who was at work and she said she'd be there as fast as she could. I sat in that waiting room for 3 hours watching families come and go and drinking terrible vending machine coffee that tasted like dirt. Finally, a doctor came out and said my grandpa was stable, but they'd found something unusual. He had a severe infection from what looked like an animal bite. They'd cleaned the wound and started him on strong antibiotics, but they needed to monitor him closely. When I asked where the bite was, the doctor got this weird expression and said it was on his buttocks. They let me see him after another hour. He was hooked up to a bunch of machines, but his color looked better and his eyes were open. He saw me and immediately scowled, which was classic grandpa even in a hospital bed. "This is your fault," were the first words out of his mouth. I thought maybe the infection was making him confused. "Grandpa, what are you talking about? How is this my fault?" He shifted in the bed and winced. "There was a rat in the toilet. When I sat down to do my business, the damn thing bit a chunk out of my eye." I stared at him trying to process what he was saying. A rat in our toilet. That bit him on the butt. It sounded like something from a horror movie. I looked back and saw it swimming around in there like it owned the place, he continued. I was so shocked I just closed the lid and walked away. That's when I came to ask if you'd used it because I thought maybe you'd seen it too. "Grandpa, how is a rat in the toilet my fault?" I was genuinely confused and kind of hurt that he was blaming me when I just saved his life by calling 911. He pointed a shaky finger at me. "If you would flush properly like I've told you 1,000 times, then rats wouldn't be able to swim up through the pipes. You always do that quick flush instead of holding the handle down. It doesn't clear the pipes right and attracts vermin." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My grandfather almost died from a rat bite, and he was giving me a lecture about toilet flushing technique. "Are you seriously blaming me for this? You got bit by a sewer rat and somehow it's because I don't flush long enough? Don't take that tone with me, boy. I know what I know. 40 years of plumbing experience before I retired." He turned his head away from me dramatically. I stood up and grabbed my jacket. I'd been sitting in that hospital for hours worried sick about him, and this was the thanks I got. Blamed for a freak rat attack because of my apparently subpar flushing habits. "Fine, leave. I don't give a rat's ass," he called out as I headed for the door. I turned back and couldn't help myself. "Clearly you do, Grandpa."